Hello there again, this is Jeremy Arney, Interim Leader of the Canadian Action Party, and this is addressed to Michelle from Ward 32 in Toronto, wherever Ward 32 is. You know, I don't. Maybe I should. You wanted to know about how similar we are to the Libertarians, and the answer is in a lot of respects we are very similar. They do not believe in huge government. They do not believe in huge government spending. They do not believe in the power of the corporations. They also believe that the financial system should be dealt with differently. I'm not going to go so far as to say that they believe in the Canadian Action Party's idea that the Bank of Canada should do all the financing. But you're right, a lot of the ideas that they have are very similar to us. And in fact, there's a friend of mine who's been talking about running in my riding for the Libertarians. And if he does, and if I decide not to run, I will be supporting him, because I believe that he is a man who would make an excellent MP, and his ideas are close enough to mine that I will totally support him. It's what I was talking about some time ago, is that we need people in the House of Commons, from the small parties, from the independents, so that people are not tied into the way they vote and think and debate by the party whips. I mean, if you take the time to watch some of the debates that take place in the House of Commons today, when a CPC member stands up, he never speaks from the heart. He never speaks like I'm speaking to you now without a script. He always, or she, always has a PMO presentation for them to give. And sometimes it's not even about the subject. I mean, we're familiar with Calandra and his incredible responses to Mr. Mulcair about Iraq. But their responses and their arguments and their debates are often about nothing to do with the subject at all. But that's what the PMO wants to talk to them about. So the idea behind this is that if we get people who are not controlled by the PMO or controlled by the NDP or Liberal offices, if we get people who are basically responding to their constituents' wants, then we'll get a government. We'll start getting a government that actually is for the people. And it doesn't bother me that much if we get a whole bunch of Green Party, Marijuana Party, Libertarians, Rhinoceros Party, you name it. As long as there's a few caps going into more cap than the rest of them, I would hope. But the idea is still there, that these parties are not there to serve anything other than the people who support them. So yes, Libertarians, great, and you're talking about one particular man who's running in a municipal election. If you like what he says, by all means vote for him. No, we don't have anybody at that level. We're a federal party. We're not provincial. We're not municipal. We have been looking at the possibility of forming things like the BC Action Party or the Alberta Action Party on a provincial level, but that's way, way down the road. And do you know something else? That's up for you to decide, not us. We can propose it, and you can veto it or not. As it is right now, we are still a federal party. And as a result of that, there were some more questions, quite a few of them actually, about health and education. Well, you know, those are provincial jurisdictions, both of them. The only thing that the federal government does is provides money to the provincial governments, portion of which can be used or should be used for health and for education. We don't have any control over how it's used. We have control simply over something like a national pandemic, for instance. We have control over the issuance of the so-called antidotes through the Department of Health, Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health actually is strange because it spends most of its time approving of things like GMO and trying very hard to fight things like the natural health products. So is it really looking after your health? No. That would have to be revamped because there's a much better way for it to go. But again, here we got to the situation where if we tried to do anything about education or about health, we'd be stepping on provincial toes. We could do things like making the money more available through a national program There's a student loan program right now which is pretty disastrous. We could make a much, much better one than that. We could go into that later on when we get into our education policy, if you wish. Student loan policy. If you've got ideas on this or anything else, you know, we want to hear from you, because it's your opinions that are forming the party. We're coming up with policies now based on what we think, but it's what you think. You're the members. You're the members of the Canadian Action Party, and if you're not, shame on you. You should be, so you can determine which way your party will go. We want to hear from you. So if you've got ideas, fire them in. Fire them into the website. Attack us on YouTube. Send them to me. Send them wherever you want. As long as they get to the Canadian Action Party, then we can start looking at what you want to do, because that's what we want to do ourselves. Look after you, the people of Canada, who really need somebody to represent them. Thank you. Oh, by the way, in the background you can hear some birds cooing, or you may have done earlier on. They live here. I live between the gorge and Portage Inlet in Victoria, so I'm surrounded on two sides by water. And these birds are very interesting because their feathers don't dry, but they dive and eat fish. So they dive into the water, come back up, and then struggle with their wet wings up into the trees, and then they stand there with their wings spread wide, drying out their feathers. They sort of look like scarecrows up there. But there they go again. See, they're fascinating birds. Anyway, that's just an aside, little Victoria piece of information for you.